If you could take your seats, we'll get started. Welcome to the American Finance Association Annual Meeting and Presidential Address. My name is Jim Schulheim. I'm the AFA Executive Secretary and Treasurer. I'm going to give you a report on the election results, a brief financial update, and some of the recent AFA activities. So first, let's recognize the results of the 2016 election. President is David Sharfstein. President-elect and 2018 Program Chair, Peter DiMarzo. Vice President, David Hirschleifer. And our new directors are Wei Jiang, Mitchell Peterson, and Tony Whited. Many thanks go to our outgoing board members for their service, and that is Andrew Metrick, Jessica Wachter, Jeff Wergler, and Luigi Zingales. And I'd like to thank the nominating committee and all the candidates who ran for office. Next, the finances of the AFA remain very good. As of our fiscal year end, June 30th, 2016, net income from operations was $340,000, and with interest income, dividends, and unrealized capital gains, our total income for the same period was $453,000. Our total assets in 2016 amounted to $16 million. Regarding membership, our regular membership numbers have remained steady after a significant increase last year because of our policy of requiring AFA membership to submit to the program. Students' membership has continued to rise by 37% in 2016 after a 157% increase in 2015. And in sum, our total membership now is over 10,000, and we haven't reached that number since 2009. So thank you very much for your membership in the AFA. Some of the activities for 2016 include an ethics committee that created the Code of Professional Conduct and Ethics approved by the board last September. We now have a new standing editorial committee that was approved and the members were selected. And the JF has a code disclosure policy that was approved by the board last year. I'd like to thank all the officers and board members for the incredible work they do on behalf of the AFA. I'd also like to thank our administrative manager, Annette Clark, for all of her amazing work on behalf of the AFA. Finally, the location for next year, and many of you may have noticed there was a bit of a change. We will be in Philadelphia, January 5th through 7th, 2018, in Atlanta in 2019, fortunately San Diego in 2020. So I'd like to now turn the meeting over to our president, Cam Harvey.
Thank you, Jim, for all the hard work that you do. And Jim recognized Annette, and I want to recognize her also. She makes this happen, and it is a great benefit to the AFA. I'd like to thank Marty Gruber, who is the AFA's representative to the NBER and provides an excellent report to the board every year and attends the board meetings at the NBER. And I would like to really thank David for putting together such a fabulous program. Many of you, I hope, were at the AFA lecture where the place was totally jammed. It was great. What a fabulous job. So what I'm going to do, just as usual, we'll go through the program chair's report, the vice president's report, the editorial report, and then special awards, which Patrick will handle. So I'd like to introduce David, the program chair of the 2017 AFA meetings.
Thank you, Cam. So we had 73 sessions on the program. There were 235 papers that were presented. Acceptance rate was about 15%. We also had more panels than usual. We had 5 panels. They were generally very well attended, and Sendil Molnathan gave the AFA lecture, and the house was pretty packed for that. Sendil did a great job. We, like in other years, had a doctoral student panel. Peter DiMarzo put together. Thanks, Peter, for doing that. Peter and I also experimented with a student poster session, which some of you may have attended. 60 students participated. Our hope is that over time more faculty will attend. It was yesterday morning, and in the future we're going to do a survey to assess how the students perceived it, what value they got out of it, and see whether or not it's worth continuing or tweaking in some way. Also want to announce that tomorrow morning from 10:15 to 11:15, we're going to have a discussion of the Code of Professional Conduct and Ethics. People are interested in sharing their views and perspectives. We're really interested in hearing what people think about it, and I would encourage you to come. It's on the second level in Superior A and B for a discussion of that from 10:15 to 11:15 in the morning. Lots of thanks goes to the session chairs, the panelists, the people that put together the panels for their work on the program, to Jim Schalheim for his help with a good deal of the organization. And I especially, just echoing Cam, I have to thank Annette Clark again for the extraordinary work she did in putting together the conference. In some sense, she really is the program chair. She managed the difficult problems skillfully and kept things running smoothly despite the inevitable bumps in the road. So thank you, Annette, for the extraordinary job you do. At this point, I'm going to just turn it over to Peter, and he's going to talk about the travel grant program.
Well, thanks, David, and again, thank you for such a wonderful program here in Chicago. It's really been a treat so far. We continued our travel grant program this year, through which AFA members can nominate their PhD students to receive funds for assistance to attend the meetings. As announced last year, we grant these AFA travel grants now in memoriam for Rick Green in recognition of his tremendous service to the AFA and his mentorship within the profession. This year we had 191 recipients of the travel grants, and those who are here, could you please stand and be recognized? Great. Thank you. Just over 1/3 were women, and just slightly over half are international students, and a testament to the worldwide scope of the AFA. And I'd also like to thank Jared Harford, Elizabeth Kemp, and Michael Roberts for the great PhD panel that we had on Thursday evening, where they gave, I think, lots of great advice to these students. With that, let me turn it over to Stefan Nagel.
So I'm going to present the Journal of Finance Editors Report. As many of you know, this was a year of transition. In 2016, we had a new team of editors coming in. We started in July of 2016. And with regards to my report today, this of course also means that many of the numbers I'm going to talk about really reflect the hard and excellent work of earlier teams of editors and not so much yet our work. But with that in mind, I am pleased to report that the journal had another good year. And I want to show you some numbers. So in terms of new submissions coming in 2016, the numbers stayed around 1,100 as in previous years, roughly flat. In terms of turnaround times, for U.S. authors. This is something that I'm sure you care about a lot. We had a somewhat an improvement, so the median turnaround is now down to 40 days. And all papers, 90% of all papers are handled with a decision within 100 days. And that's also a number that we strive to improve in the future. So we're going to try very hard to get back to you, in a time shorter than 100 days. In terms of first round statistics, so these are basically the decisions for initial submissions that come in. You can see the desk rejection rate on the left-hand chart has stayed relatively steady. It was 39% in 2016, quite similar to the years before. And that's a number that we think will probably stay in that range. For papers where it's just very clear that they don't have a reasonable chance to clear the bar at the JF, it makes a lot of sense to get back to the authors relatively quickly rather than holding the paper for several months in the review process at the JF. In terms of R&Rs, you can see on the right-hand chart that the probability or the fraction of papers that received an R&R in the first round has gone up a lot in 2016, but that's compared with a, in a way, abnormally low number in 2015. And those of you who recall Ken Singleton's report last year, he pointed to a few temporary factors that led to an abnormally low rate in 2015, and he predicted that this would probably revert to some extent, and that's also what we have seen. In terms of total articles published, things are quite steady. So we are around 70 articles per year in 2016, just like in the previous years. The JFE and the RFS that you can see here on the chart as well, they have somewhat higher numbers, again, comparable to previous years. And although in quantity we are behind the JFE and the RFS, if you look at the impact of papers, the JF is doing extremely well. So as in previous years, the JF is number 3 in economics, behind the AER and Econometrica in terms of the total sites, and ahead of the QJE and ahead of all of the other finance journals. In terms of the impact factor, so this is now the 2-year impact factor that takes all of the articles that were published in 2013 and 14 and looks at how many sites they got in 2015. You can see that the JF is ahead of all the other finance journals with an impact factor of 5.29. In terms of economics, if you compare to the top 5 economics journals, the only one that's ahead of the JF is QJE. The Journal of Economic Literature is number 1, but that's kind of an outlier or a special case because it's a journal with review articles that tend to get very high citations. Yeah. But there was basically no change to previous years. This was the same situation in previous years as well. If you look at the 5-year impact factor, that one tends to be a bit more stable, usually across years. The picture is very similar. So the JF is behind the QJE, but ahead of all of the other top econ journals and ahead of also the other finance journals. Yeah? So the JF continues to do very well in terms of these impact measures. Yeah. Let me talk about a few things that we changed at the JF in the past year. So just first two smaller things. So in order to make it more convenient for authors who work in LaTeX, we changed some of the policies for final submissions. So it used to be the case that when you submit a LaTeX article as a final submission, you had to remove all kinds of cross-references and BibTeX formatting and other things. This is no longer necessary, so this should be much more convenient now for people who work with LaTeX to have their articles in the JF. We also started doing plagiarism checking. So for all of the papers that get a conditional acceptance, we will run them through a plagiarism checking. This could also be useful just as a service to the authors because there might be an accidental self-plagiarism somewhere and we are hoping to also pick that up. Somewhat more substantially, we changed the policy with regards to so-called reject and resubmits. So our editorial team had quite a intensive discussion about that, what to do about those. And we came down to basically not doing reject and resubmits anymore. And this is for a number of reasons. So for example, from talking to colleagues and especially junior faculty, we realized that in many cases with reject and resubmits, it's kind of unclear to people, what it exactly means to have a reject and resubmit, how you should change the paper in response to reject and resubmit. It's also unclear whether the paper will go back to the same referees or not. It's not clear, like in 2016 now at the JF, it's not clear what happens in a time of editorial transition. Does it go back to the old editorial team or to the new incoming editorial team? And then finally, we are worried that reject and resubmits in a way distort the transparency of the editorial process, because the statistics that a journal reports are difficult to interpret when you have reject and resubmits, because the journal doesn't report how many of rejects are actually reject and resubmits. So if you look at, for example, the number of rounds that papers that get accepted go through, it might look very good, but you don't know how many of these papers that got accepted after 1 or 2 rounds actually had an additional round that nobody really knows about. So we basically opted for more clarity and transparency in the process, and that's why we decided to get rid of reject and resubmits. But this, of course, also means that we are sometimes going to issue weak or speculative revise and resubmits, and we will make this clear to the authors. But we expect for that reason, going forward, some of the statistics that the Journal of Finance will report, they will change a little bit. We will certainly have a little bit of lower conversion rate of revise and resubmits into acceptances, because there will be some speculative cases among these R&Rs that will probably not make it. But overall, we think the process is going to be more transparent this way. And then finally, one big change was also the code disclosure policy that we adopted. And many of you will notice that empirical and computational work in recent years has become much more complex and complicated. And it's very often difficult to reproduce a paper, even with information in an extensive internet appendix. And for that reason, among others, we basically decided now to go and ask authors to disclose their code if their paper is accepted at the JF. And we think this is at least one step towards improving the reproducibility of research, which is basically a prerequisite for replicability of research. And in the long run, we think this should give authors who publish in a JF also additional credibility, because when you submit your paper to the JF and it gets accepted there, you're basically confirming that you're willing to let the sun shine on your code and let others have a look at it. And so the credibility and the impact of these results should also be enhanced by this. And we expect that this will help enhance the place of the JF as the outlet for the very best research in our profession. Yeah? And from what we can tell, authors seem to kind of agree with this. We have been watching the monthly submission numbers since we implemented this policy in September, beginning of September of this year. And so in the chart here, you can see the monthly submission numbers. The orange ones are from 2016, so the recent years. The blue ones are those from the year before. And so, it's of course not a clean experiment here, but in all of these months since we started the policy, the submission numbers have been higher than in the year before. All right, so let me end my report with a few thanks. So I want to thank my co-editors. It's a terrific team, and I have very much enjoyed the work with the team over the past 6 months so far. I would also like to thank Ken Singleton and his team, Michael Roberts and Bruno Billet, for a very smooth transition and their help in making this possible. I would also like to thank our hardworking associate editors. Without their very valuable advice, our job would be much, much harder. And we are very grateful for all of the work that they are putting in. We are also very grateful to the referees. So there's more than 1,000 referees that work for the JF every year. And this is a tremendous service to the profession that they are providing. And finally, I'd like to thank our editorial assistant, Wendy Washburn. She helped us enormously in getting, just in operational terms, hitting the ground running at the JF and getting this whole thing, this transition managed. All right, so that was my report. I now want to go to the best paper prizes. And before we go to the prizes, there's actually some good news that I want to report first. So our sponsors, the Brattle Group and Amundi Smith Breeden, they have graciously agreed to substantially raise their awards this year and going forward. So our first prize now comes with $25,000, and a distinguished paper prize comes with $10,000. So let's give an extra round of applause to our donors for raising their commitment. Okay, let me quickly say a few words about how we selected the prize winners. So this year, we basically told the associate editors that if they like, they can self-select based on their expertise to vote for one or for both of these prizes. So this is a change compared to with previous years. And every AE basically has 3 votes that they can distribute any way they like across these 2 prizes. Yeah? And so the AEs then nominated their top-ranked papers from the issues until October 2016. And we then received that ranking. And to a large extent, we followed that ranking. But we did make, among the team of editors, we carefully looked at the papers, and we basically made the final selection among the highest ranked papers based on the AE ranking. All right. And so let's get to the Brattle Group prizes. And for that, I would like Linda Baroki to come up and help us hand out the prizes. Linda is a representative for the Brattle Group. And then also Amit Seru, my co-editor, is going to help hand out those prizes. Okay, so we'll start with the distinguished papers. One of the distinguished papers is an information-based theory of time-varying liquidity by Brennan Daly, Duke University, and Brett Green, University of California, Berkeley. Okay, the next distinguished paper is Trade Credit and Industry Dynamics, Evidence from Trucking Firms, Jean-Noël Barrault, MIT. And then we have a first prize. The first prize is Asymmetric Information about Collateral Values, Johannes Ströbel, New York University. All right, so this now gets us to the Smith Breeden prizes. And I would like to have Wei Zhong come up, my co-editor. And if Doug Breeden is here, is Doug Breeden here? Doug Breeden is there. So Doug Breeden represents Amundi Smith Breeden. So the first distinguished paper prize is Earnings Announcements and Systematic Risk, Pavel Savor, Temple University, and Mungo Wilson, Oxford University. The Then we have another distinguished paper, The Boats That Did Not Sail, Asset Price Volatility in a Natural Experiment, Peter Cowdice, Stanford University. Okay, and this leaves us with the first prize. The first prize is, Does Academic Research Destroy Stock Return Predictability? David McLean, Georgetown University, and Jeffrey Pontiff, Boston College. All right, so this concludes my part, and I'm going to hand over to Patrick Bolton, who is going to present the special AFA awards.
There are quite a few of you standing in the back. There are seats still here in front, if you want to move over on the left here, and a few on the right here as well. In January 2000, the AFA instituted a Society of Fellows of the Association, and each year the nominating committee, chaired by the current president, solicits names from the current fellows and nominates a slate of no more than 5 candidates, from which the current fellows elect one new fellow. And the winner for this year, 2017, is José Schenkman. José is the Charles and Lin Zhang Professor of Economics at Columbia University. He's a fellow of the Econometric Society and the American Academy of Arts and Science, a member of the National Academy of Sciences, and a corresponding member of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. José has had a truly distinguished research career. Many of you may have noticed his lead article in the latest issue of the Journal of Finance, Misspecified Recovery, that's the title of the article, written with Jaroslav Borovica and Lars Hansen. That's one of 2 articles in the Journal of Finance that José published this year, and he published another one last year. The first time I came across José Schenkman's work is when I was taught the Krebs-Schenkman article in the Bell Journal of Economics 1983 with the title, Quantity Pre-Commitment and Bertrand Competition Yield Cournot Outcomes, which is now a classic in industrial organization theory. But José has made many other fundamental contributions in several disciplines in economics, including finance, especially in his more recent research. Let me list a few. Let me start with dynamic optimization and growth theory, with his Journal of Economic Theory article in 1976 on optimal steady states of end sector growth models, and his later contributions with William Brock, Alosio Araujo, and Ivar Ekland, and Larry Benveniste. That was the early phase of José Schenkman's research. Let me also mention his models of social interaction with his Quarterly Journal of Economics 2000 article, Measuring Trust, with Ed Glazer, David Leibson, and Christine Sauter as co-authors. And in finance, let me just mention 3 particularly noteworthy and original articles. His simple 3-factor model of the yield curve, titled Common Factors Affecting Bond Returns with Bob Litterman in 1991. His classic article with Lars Hansen, Back to the Future, Generating Moment Implications for Continuous Time Markov Processes in Econometrica 1995. And his by now classic article with Wei Xiong, Overconfidence and Speculative Bubbles in the Journal of Political Economy, 2003. I wish I could go on. The breadth of José's interest is simply stunning, and so is the depth of his numerous contributions. Now, I have a little bit of bad news to say, which is that there was a snowstorm today in New York, and Jose has been stuck at the airport, and he was unfortunately not able to come. But he emailed me a small message he wanted to communicate to everyone, so let me read it to you. Thank you very much. It is an enormous and unexpected honor to join the incredibly distinguished group of fellows of the AFA. I'm a latecomer to financial economics. Most of my earlier papers were in economic theory or in other areas of applied economics. So perhaps I can be accused of having the enthusiasm of the converted. However, I cannot think of another field of economics that turns out as many papers that use cutting-edge theory or empirical methods to answer truly relevant questions. I'm very proud to be recognized as a member of the community of finance scholars. Please join me in a round of applause for Jose Schenkman. Now, although Jose was unable to come today, we have the great honor to have the presence of last year's winner of elected fellow for 2016, who in the meantime, this predictability involved here, was awarded the Nobel Prize for Economics for its contributions to contract theory. And so great honor to have Oliver Hart with us here, sitting there. I don't know if you want to stand up or maybe even say a couple of comments. You want to come here? Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. It's been a great year for me, starting off with the AFA fellow and then the Nobel Prize. It hasn't been so good for the rest of the world, but what can you do? When I got the AFA award and I made a speech, I said that from the beginning of my career, the overlap between my work and finance has always been very important, has always been there. And the Nobel Prize Committee seemed to agree with that because in their scientific report, when they were talking about applications of incomplete contracts, they said that the most important application was to finance. The rest of the world didn't quite see it that way. When I got calls from journalists, they wanted to talk to me about executive compensation. I had to explain that that was the other guy who had worked on that. We settled on prison privatization, which seemed to be a topic that they could handle. But I agree with the prize committee that the work in finance is the most important application. And in fact, I think it's fair to say that without the connection to finance, I certainly wouldn't be an AFA fellow, but I also don't think I would have won the Nobel Prize. So I thank you all for helping that interaction to take place and for making my work better. Thanks very much.
The Fisher-Black Prize, which is awarded every other year to a scholar under age of 40, honors a body of work that best exemplifies the Fisher-Black hallmark of developing original research that is relevant to finance practice. The Fisher-Black Prize Committee this year, which I chaired, comprised Ulrike Malmandier, Lasse Petersen, Steve Kaplan, and Ken Singleton. The committee proposed 3 candidates to the AFA board, And the winner was selected following a vote by the board and the Fisher-Black Prize Committee. This is a new procedure, and I thought I should give you the details of that. And now I'm very happy to announce that the winner is Amir Sufi. Let me say a few words about Amir Sufi. He's the Bruce Lindsay Professor of Economics and Public Policy at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Amir has had a remarkable and original, important and influential research record in a very few years. He completed his PhD in 2005 at MIT. His early research in corporate finance has focused on important issues in financial contracting, incomplete contracting, that had been explored before he jumped into this area, mostly by theorists, and had received limited attention by empiricists. Amir Sufi's early studies of syndicated bank loans, bank lines of credit, creditor control rights, debt renegotiation fill an important gap. These studies have been hugely influential and are widely studied. But even more influential is Amir Sufi's research post-financial crisis. In several landmark articles published between 2009 and 2016, Amir Sufi and his co-authors have shown how the housing bubble and the subprime mortgage lending boom were at the epicenter of the crisis. The over-indebtedness of low-income households is a key reason for the unprecedented decline in consumption, the sharp rise in unemployment, and the persistence of the crisis. The culmination of this research came with the publication of his widely acclaimed book with Atif Mian, House of Debt, in 2014, which is already regarded as one of the major books on the Great Recession. So please, Amir, if you want to come here.